Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by with the Season 4 update here in Warzone. We obviously got a pretty standard weapons update and meta update. We saw some new weapons added in courtesy of the Battle Pass, the FFAR and the LC10, both of which are absolutely insane. Surprise, surprise, the new Battle Pass weapons are very good. Typically, they always are, unless it's like a super niche weapon of some kind, right? But standard weapons, popular weapons like rifles and SMGs are always very, very good when they come out of the Battle Pass, because it's Call of Duty trying to incentivize you and bait you into spending money, buying the tiers, unlocking them as fast as possible, using some FOMO tactics, if you will. It's nothing new. It is what it is. We also saw weapon balancing, buffs and nerfs to various different weapons, primarily buffs to a lot of weapons. However, the Season 4 meta update kind of negates and undoes a lot of the progress that had been made in the Warzone meta for the past season or so. Let's throw it back, for instance, to the Season 3 Reloaded meta updates. This was one of the better meta updates that we've seen in some time, in my opinion, because they focused on a lot of variety. The AK-74 at the time was insanely overpowered, and they nerfed it some and really brought it in line with the other rifles and made it more balanced out. The AMAX surprisingly got a weird buff, but it was still very good at the time. The Kilo got some interesting updates, but they also shifted focus to a lot of older era weapons. The BAL ended up getting some updates. It got a nice little damage buff there. The Holger got some damage buffs and some range nerfs, but it made it overall a little bit more effective there. The M4 saw some large buffs that made it very competitive and almost in line with a lot of the Black Ops 6 guns. It was actually completely usable and could stack up against other top tier meta options. Same deal with the TAC 56, able to see some huge buffs that actually made it very competitive. We saw some SMG changes where the HRM got a little bit stronger, the WASP 9 got a little bit stronger, the MX9 maybe reached its absolute peak in its overall meta lifespan, where it was the best it had ever been since MW2 launched, right? We saw really productive updates here, the P90 as well, where the meta was not so one-dimensional. Hey, if you're not using Black Ops 6 guns, you're not competing. This was one of these very rare meta updates, but also a very intentional meta update that addressed the diversity and made it a much more broad meta. It wasn't so focused on the here and now Black Ops 6 meta. It said, hey, okay, you want to use Black Ops 6 guns? Obviously, they're going to be great. Go ahead, rock those. There were buffs and adjustments to several of them. You want to use older era guns, though? Now you've got diversity. Now you've got some uniqueness and some freshness in the meta. Took a very boring meta at the time that was just AMAX and AK and turned it into a bunch of different options, not just from this game. And this seemed to be a great trend. Now, yes, there were still distinct differences in the feel of the BAL 27 or the Holger versus using an AMAX or a Kilo. Like, Black Ops 6 guns still felt a little bit more dependable, but if you put the time in and you knew what you were doing, you could get by using these older era weapons and still do well, as we showcased on the channel a lot. And this seemed like a very productive thing. And then we got word and a little bit of a preview of what the Season 4 meta update was going to be like directly from the devs in the dev call that I was a part of prior to the season dropping. And I've got my notes from this call here listed in front of me because they did preview the general Warzone meta update to come in a more broad stance, if you will. They didn't give us specifics on what was going to be changing, because I feel like if they did, there would have been some pushback, because here's how they described what the Season 4 meta was going to be like and what the changes were going to be like from a top-down, point of view, and how they're looking at the meta going forward. They say, for LMGs, this is a category they want to focus on their reliability over long range. For SMGs, they want to introduce increased viability into the mid-range and give SMGs the ability to thrive up close, but then also have some mid-range capabilities as well. They wanted the rifles to be very dominant for mid to long range, and that's where they stand out the most. Maybe not as much, focusing on the close range, where rifles probably shouldn't be better SMGs than the SMGs or better shotguns than the shotguns. Kind of looking at the AK there being so broken for so long beforehand, right? And they fixed that in Season 3 Reloaded. They didn't want to have that situation repeat itself. They said the balance is to make more weapons viable and to not focus on nerfing guns as much unless there are extreme outliers. If there is a super broken or overpowered gun, then that would be nerfed, but they really want to focus on buffing guns to bring in an overall level of competition rather than nerfing guns down to the general average, right? The average and then gets buffed up and gets brought up so that everything is competitive. And so you hear that and you're like, oh, okay, well, there's a lot of really competitive Black Ops 6 guns, right? That means probably we have 150 plus guns and maybe 10 of them are at the best level of competition. We're going to see those other 140 guns buffed or adjusted, not every single one because that's unrealistic, but a lot of those maybe focused on a little bit more. We're going to see that diversity brought up even more. You're going to stack on top of the good things you did with Season 3 Reloaded. Well, that's not really what happened. Instead, they ended up doing a very interesting weapon update for Season 4, as the patch notes show here, buffing and making the Black Ops 6 guns really stand out even more. AK velocity buff, Aim's velocity buff, Val velocity buff, AMAX velocity buff, Cypher velocity buff, GPR velocity buff, Kilo velocity buff, Krig velocity buff. This is supposed to be the XM4 velocity buff, Model L velocity buff. So you took, let's just hyper focus here on the rifle meta. You took the Black Ops 6 guns, which already still had a slight edge on the good MW2 and MW3 guns like the TAC-56, the M4, the Holger, etc. And you've now created an even larger gap. These updates, if they were also applied to MW2 and MW3 weapons, would have created again an even more diverse meta, an even better feeling meta, one that honestly replicated, the Warzone 1 meta, where it was high velocity, low recoil rifles over range, and it gave you that good counterplay to snipers like the HDR, for instance. But instead, they did all this work in Season 3 Reloaded and made this really diverse meta where there were really good Black Ops 6 options, really good MW3 options, really good MW2 options. They've now undone all of that and made it so that now, while yes, there are some usable MW2 and MW3 guns, and they're gonna feel way better than they ever did before Season 3 Reloaded, there's now this even larger gap between the good Black Ops 6 guns and those older era guns. And you're now back in the same spot of, okay, we went from a pretty diverse meta that was really balanced across the board. You say you want to continue to promote that diversity and promote that, consistency between all games guns, and you just focus on the new one. Now, I'm not surprised they want the Black Ops 6 guns to stand out more than anything else, because that's going to push more sales of BO6. It's going to push players to level these guns if they haven't yet. But then what's the point of having the 100 plus Modern Warfare 2 guns and Modern Warfare 3 guns if you're going to focus on them some and say, hey, we're going to promote this more and more so that these are more competitive and you can actually use these guns and use the blueprints you bought a year ago, only to then one update later invalidate all of that. This is a meta update that seemed good for what they did to these guns, because this is going to help recreate that more Warzone 1-like feel. And they even did it with the SMGs as well, just focusing on the BO6 subs and making those more dominant and sort of leaving the MW3 subs and the MW2 subs in the dust. There's really no reason to use any of those old ones outside of maybe the MX9. There's no diversity there anymore. They've sort of canceled out all the good they did in that last update and recreated and reintroduced a large gap between now. So we're back to a meta that's defined, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of fun, there's a lot of very good options to use right now. We'll have a full meta tier list breakdown coming at some point in the next few days. It's just unfortunate that it almost took a step. It took 2 steps forward, but then 1 step back at the same time. There was progress, but there was also some regress at the same time as well in terms of overall diversity. So I feel like they kind of missed the mark here. Hopefully it's something they do course correct in the future, because like I said, if you're going to have the MW2 and the MW3 guns in the game, they should at least be usable. Otherwise, they're just bloating the game for no real reason. Hopefully something changed with this, but I did want to have this general breakdown because I thought this was particularly interesting when we went through the patch notes themselves, and they have this whole section of saying, hey, our goal is to redefine each weapon class's role, except it's just going to be Black Ops 6 weapon classes and have no mind and have no attention paid towards MW2 and MW3 weapon classes. That is going to wrap things up, though. If you guys enjoyed this video, a like rating is always seriously appreciated. Obviously, support on this video does sort of show the devs themselves, oh, there is a lot of attention being put towards MW2 and MW3 guns from the community's POV. Maybe we should focus on, balancing this across the board so there are more options. The more options, the merrier. As we do see any new updates to the meta, whether it's buffs, nerfs, any announcements in regards to their plans here, you guys know I'm gonna keep you informed with that alongside everything else going on in COD. So feel free to hit that subscribe button on your way out to stay up to date. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.